Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we continue our study of Melachim Bet, the second book of Kings. We are in the middle of chapter 22. We are up to verse 14. We just read of how Yoshiyahu, when he was, or the King Josiah, when he was renovating and repairing the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, that the priests came across a scroll of the Torah, and they read the scroll to Yoshiyahu, and Yoshiyahu recognized that the wrath of God would be upon them if they did not fulfill fulfill the mission of obeying the will of the one and only God and abandon the worship of idols, which led to the terrible corruption and oppression which characterized the kingdom of Menashe, Yoshiyahu's grandfather, and Ammon, his father, and the first 16 years of his own dominion. And Yoshiyahu sent the people and said to the prophet of God, and said, find out for me what the story is. Is this real? How should we handle this? So that's where we're up to, verse 14. Vayelech Chilkiyahu HaKohen. So Chilkiyahu, the priest, Va'achikam, V'achbor, V'shafan, V'asaya, those are the individuals that were assigned by the king to seek the wisdom of God. El Hulda HaNaviyah, to Hulda, the prophetess, Eshet Shalom ben Tikva ben Charchas, who is the wife of Shalom, the son of Tikva, the son of Charchas, who was the Shomer HaBegadim, who was the keeper of, presumably, the king's wardrobe. She was a prophetess. V'hi Yoshevet b'Yerushalayim ba'Mishneh. She was sitting, doing her duties as a prophetess. People would come to her to seek wisdom of God and advice. In Bamishneh, in the second place, apparently like the second quarter, or maybe the place where not the top level king's officers used to live, but the second level of king's officers. Vayidabru Elah, and they spoke to her. In other words, they asked her, this is the scroll that we found. What's the deal? What do we do? Vatomar Alam, and she said to them, Ko Amar Adonai Elohei Yisrael, so says God, the Lord of Israel. Imru la'ish asher shalach etchem elai. Tell the person who sent you to me as follows. In other words, tell the king as follows. Ko amar Adonai, so says God, Hineni mevi ra'ah el hamakom hazeh v'al yoshevav. I am going to bring evil. I am going to bring evil upon this place and the inhabitants of this place. Et kol divrei hasefer, all of the things that are written in this scroll, asher kara melech Yehuda, that the king of Judah has read. Tachat asher azavuni, the reason why I'm going to bring punishment to them is because they have abandoned me. Vayikatru le'elohim acherim, they have brought incense to other gods. Leman hachiseni, in such a way that it would bring me to anger. B'chol maseh yedehem, with everything that they do. In other words, even when they do good things, it's being done for corrupt and incorrect reasons. V'nitzisach hamasi b'makom hazeh, my anger was kindled against them in this place. In other words, this place of the Holy Temple, v'lo tichbeh, it shall not be put out. The impression one gets from here is that it's too late to fix anything. It's important to note that in the concurrent prophecies of Jeremiah, one gets the impression that as hopeless as things seemed, Jeremiah was still asking the people to repent in order to avert the bad decree, or at least mitigate the bad decree. There we get the impression that there is hope. It's just that people need to change course. Here we seem to get the feeling and the sense that it's too little, too late, and the show is over. Regardless, we'll see that Yoshiyahu gets the message that he needs to fix things. V'el melech Yehuda, and to the king of Yehuda, sholeach eschem ledroshes Adonai, who sent you here in order to seek out God's counsel. Ko somrei lav, this is what you need to tell him. Ko amar Adonai Elohei Yisrael, so says God, the Lord of Israel, Hadorim asher shamata, the words that you have just heard. Ya'an, however, rach levavacha, because your heart is soft. Vatikonami pnei Adonai, and you humbled yourself before God. This is crucial here. Remember, the key flaw of his predecessors was the flaw of arrogance, as we emphasized throughout our podcasts until this point. God saw in Yoshiyahu the humility of recognizing we are on a bad path. I am on a bad path. I need to fix things. When you humbled yourself when you heard that which I have spoken regarding this place, Yoshev and its inhabitants, and I said that I would destroy it and curse it. And you tore your clothing. In other words, you yourself understood your own responsibility in this matter, which is the hallmark of humility. And you cried before me. Go back to the podcasts we discussed about Chizkiyahu. When he cried, the act of crying is the ultimate act of humility, of recognizing that a person himself is at fault. A person himself bears responsibility. A person himself feels helpless before God. I have heard this. So says God. Therefore, I will gather you unto your fathers. In other words, I will postpone this disaster that I have declared upon the people because of you and your good and your humility. And you will die in peace. You will be gathered to your grave in peace. But you are not going to see all of the evil that I'm going to bring on this place. And they brought the king back this message. Now remember, when almost the identical message was delivered by the prophet Isaiah to Hezekiah, he said to himself, well, good. At least it's not going to happen in my lifetime. Let's see what Josiah's reaction is going to be in the next chapter 23, which I'll start right now. So the king sent Vayasfu Elav Kol Ziknei Yehuda v'Yerushalayim. Immediately, it brought him to action, repair, fix. Not saying, okay, good, I'm cool, I'm going to die okay. Whatever happens later when I'm gone, who cares? But no, he realized this is not enough. I need to do something. So he calls together all of the elders of Judah and Jerusalem. Vayal hamelach beit Adonai, and the king went up to the house of God. Remember that term, la'alot, to go up to the house of God, connotes when we discussed Hezekiah, Chizkiyahu, to go up means humbling yourself before God, recognizing that you're down and God is up. So he went to the house of God, he went up. And all of the prominent people of Judah and all of the residents of Jerusalem went up with him. And the priests and the prophets, and all the nation, from the small ones to the great ones. And he read to them, as called Divrei Sefer Abris, all of the words of the book of the covenant, Adonai, which was found in the house of God. And the king stood upon the pillar, the podium. And he made a covenant before God. And he made a promise in front of all the people. That people were going to follow God. They were going to observe his commandments and his testimonies and his rules with a full heart and with a full soul, to fulfill the words that were written in this covenant, which were written in this scroll. And the entire nation stood and accepted the covenant upon themselves. So here we have Yoshiyahu's reaction. His reaction was one of action. Unfortunately, one does get the sense here of too little too late. One gets the sense that Yoshiyahu is going to fix, but can he really fix the soul of the people? Can he really fix the heart of the people? Can he really make them better? As we know from the book of Jeremiah, as Yoshiyahu was trying to implement his reforms, the people remained. The people occasionally did outward actions that improved themselves, outward actions that made themselves better, at least on the surface, but inside they remained the same. But that we'll see and we'll study together in the next podcast. Thank you so much for studying together with me. Looking forward to continuing chapter 23 together from verse 4 in the next podcast. Have a wonderful day.